Hi, good morning, everybody. We are going to start. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. My name is Hila Singh. I am the data visualization and GIS specialist right here at the Lead Library, which means that I get to learn and research and then teach whoever's interested all kinds of fun new technologies, and Qualtrics is one of them. So thank you for being here. If you haven't signed in, please do so on your way out. There is a bunch of information. There's some links to the left of the screen. There is a LibGuide that I created for this workshop and just some reference with some recommended reading and other stuff for the rest for after the workshop. And also I am recording it, so this is why I have this lovely microphone, and I'm actually recording my screen as well. So I will upload the recording of this workshop to this LibGuide after this session. Okay, so now that we are ready to start, materials in this workshop, most of them are used under Creative Commons license from University of Texas in Austin. You are welcome to use whatever material you want from this workshop. You can mix and match and do whatever you want with it, as long as you acknowledge who created it. Okay, so today I'm going to introduce myself in a bit more detail in a moment, and then we will go through some very basic principles of survey design, and then we'll do some activities that will introduce us to some of the in and outs of Qualtrics. So like I said, I'm Hila Singh. This is my email, hila.singh@unlv.edu. I'm the data visualization and GIS specialist at the Department of Knowledge Production right here at Lead Library. The link on the bottom is the LibGuide that accompanies this workshop, like I said, so feel free to use it and consult it throughout this workshop and after. And even if you have questions after this workshop, you are welcome to email me with any question that you have. We can always set up a research consultation. If you guys are working on a study and need some extra one-on-one help, or do you want me even to meet with you in collaboration with your faculty, I'm open to that. So just email me and we can get that started. Okay. I know we already started, but a couple of more caveats. So first of all, this is a pilot workshop, and it's an introductory. So what pilot means is that we are testing. This is the first time we are teaching this workshop at the Lead Library. So at the end, there will be an end of workshop survey, and your feedback is really, really valuable, so that we'll know how to improve it, how to change it, or whatever else you might need, or whatever information we were missing that you would like us to review more at length at the next one. That'd be great. The second part of this phrase, that it is introductory, meaning Qualtrics takes a long time to learn all the different question types. It is a very sophisticated program. And what I'm doing here is really just giving you a super, 10,000 miles in the air overview of what it looks like and what it means to work with Qualtrics. So just beware. Another thing, I'm not a methodologist. I have a lot of experience. I have worked with Qualtrics for about 5 years on various types of surveys and various sizes of surveys. So I have worked with it also in several different disciplines, whereas my background is actually in public health. I'm working on my dissertation right now in public health. I worked with it also in education capacity and a little bit in marketing. So there's a lot of things to learn here. So like I said, I'm not a methodologist, I'm not an expert, I'm just a resource for you guys because of my experience. Before you actually want to do a survey, please consult with your faculty, with your other researchers, with experts, and with the literature. In the LibGuide, there is a list of recommended books or any other articles that you might want to consult with. If you have a specific question of like who I should ask about survey design, you can always email me and I can refer you to people. Lastly, do not do any survey that talks to people that you want to publish without IRB approval. I am not an authority on Institutional Review Board, which is what IRB stands for. Again, consult with your faculty. This is what they're here for. Okay, So today's learning objectives are to list best practices of survey design, to differentiate between types of questions in Qualtrics, and at the end we'll also have an activity in which you develop and create a survey. So what is Qualtrics? Qualtrics is a university-recommended software for creating and distributing surveys and web forms. It is available for free to UNLV students, faculty, and staff. Due to its structure and the company, like Qualtrics, the company, the way that it is built and maintained, it is approved for most confidential data, including HIPAA, FERPA, and IRB. However, some survey responses may be subject to the Open Records Act, which means that someone can subpoena your records. So if you're doing a very confidential study, for example, something about like drug use, which might get people into trouble, you can have request an advanced IRB protection where you appeal to, you request, I'm not really sure how it works in UNLV, but with my previous university, you were able to request like an advanced protection from like the NIH or something that says that your data is really confidential, and even a court subpoena cannot really take that from you. So just an FYI, it's an option. Okay, so first thing we'll start with Principles of Survey Design, and that is borrowed from Earl Babby, which is one of the books that I mentioned in the LibGuide. So the first thing is to choose appropriate question form. So you want to combine, whenever possible, questions and statement. And here's a good example. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? My health provider spent enough time with me addressing my needs. Versus, how satisfied or dissatisfied were you with the amount of time your health provider spent with you addressing your need? So for example, in here, the first one is a statement when somebody can say, it could be a Likert scale of how much do you agree or disagree. And the second one, even though it's essentially the same question, you can have much more qualitative information from that statement, from that question. Another thing is that you need to decide between open-ended and closed-ended questions. So an open-ended question would be, what's your reason for attending this workshop? Type your answer in the box below. Whenever you have an open-ended question, you are running the risk of people being super smart and giving you super smart answers, which then you have to work through and clean up. And as we will talk in 2 weeks when I run the Cleaning Data with Open Refine workshop, cleaning data is a pain, and about 80% of your study is cleaning your data. So beware of open-ended questions, but they're really important. The next one is close-ended. How often do you check your Twitter feed? So then you give your participants options, and they pick one or all, and we'll talk about the considerations for that a little later. Avoid double-barreled questions. So make sure you're not asking for a single answer to a question with multiple parts. So here's a bad question. Don't do that. Do you think that it is wise to cut spending on social programs and increase military spending? Essentially, with this question, you're asking two questions. You want someone to tell you their opinion of if they think it's okay to cut spending on social program. And then you need to ask a separate question. Do you think we should increase military spending? So you're essentially asking two questions. So it could be that people agree with one half and not the other. So be aware of that as you are asking a question. Yes?
For the previous slide, there were two different ways of asking the question. Did you say, I wasn't clear, was one of them preferable over the other?
No. It's really what you want to get from your data. Yeah. And this is the thing where you want to perhaps consult with someone who has done a similar survey, or maybe what other surveys were conducted about your topic, to see what data they got from it and see if this is really what you're looking for. Okay. Okay, so respondents must be competent to answer. And that's also a question in IRB, but also here for like the normal, reasonable respondent. So you don't want to ask something that is difficult to estimate or remember, like how many donuts have you eaten in your lifetime? People ask that, so don't do that. You can never estimate that. I don't know, 1,000, 1 million, and what kind of quality of data will you actually get from that, right? Okay, your respondents might be willing to answer. So sometimes people will not be into share certain information with us. For example, how often do you use drugs to cope with negative emotions? So this is a very personal question that might be involved with what might people perceive as a stigma, and they don't know you, so why would they want to answer that? So think about what is another way you might be able to get this type of information from people, or what type of relationship you might need to develop with your participants before you can ask them a question like that. Okay, the questions should be relevant. If you ask for attitude on a topic that are unfamiliar with or don't care about, they're more likely to make up answers. So what is your opinion on the nuclear freeze campaign? Who knows what the nuclear freeze campaign is? I had to Google it. It is something that related to the Cold War. So good luck. So what is your opinion of it? I don't know, but then right? People are going to make up answers, and it's just going to mess up your data. Garbage in, garbage out. Okay, make sure your items are clear, so they should be precise, but also want to make them a little short. So don't overcomplicate in an effort to be precise. So bad question, what was the state of the cleanliness of the room, or how clean was the room? State of cleanliness versus how clean was it? Much easier to understand the second question. Avoid negative item. So state whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. I don't think that this is an unwise policy to continue sending food aid to Poland. So first of all, in general, you want to avoid negative question because, I don't think so might confuse your participants. They might skip, or it might not even register that you're asking for a no or a negative question. But here you even have a double negative, which makes it even more complicated because you have I don't think, and then it's unwise. So that's a language issue that just avoid. Don't do that. Okay, avoid biased item and terms. So be wary of the social desirability of what you're asking and how your language may impact it. So how short was Napoleon versus how would you describe Napoleon's height? The first part has some value judgment. How short was he? So you just assume that there was an issue with his height that wasn't a lot. Versus how would you describe Napoleon's height? That is much more neutral and will allow the respondent to kind of think about how they would describe it on their own. Next, make sure responses are mutually exclusive. If respondents can only choose one response, there shouldn't be a case in which more than one is true. So this is a bad example. How many nights a week do you shower before bed? Every day, 5 to 6 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week, 3 to 4 days, or 1 to 3 days. What we can see here is that there's a lot of overlap. Essentially, 4 out of these 5 questions have at least one day in which they overlap with one another. So a good way to fix that is either you give like a scale of 1 to 7 and they can answer that, or you can say under 3 days a week, 4 days or more a week every day, or something like that. So just to help them to really hone in on one answer, and that's it. Last few tips. Think about what you want to know before you start writing questions. If you have the goal in mind of exactly what you want to go into studying, so if you have at least an overarching research question, you can develop your coming question for your survey from that. I suggest that you draft your survey before you go into Qualtrics. At least have an idea of how many questions you want and what way you want to ask them. Like, do you want it to ask a multiple choice? Do you want to ask a multiple selection? Do you want open fields? So think about that. Another thing that I would like to suggest here is that if you're asking something that may have been asked before, there's a lot of surveys that are available. For example, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, actually publishes all the surveys that they're asking. So if they have already asked that question, you don't need to invent the wheel. You can just reuse that same question in your survey and just ask whatever population or sample you are asking. Next is to ask a few questions as possible, and that's to retain the interest of your participant to make sure that they're giving you appropriate responses. Imagine how you're going to use your results, and I will touch that in a minute, what that looks like on the other side and how you want to analyze it. And last but not least, always pilot your survey. So before you're sending it to the entire campus community, ask a few of your friends to respond to it first. First, it will help you to see if all the links are working, if all the pictures that you may have uploaded, and if the questions look, or even if you have typos, exactly how you want it to be. You also want then to see what people respond to and if their responses make sense. So if you ask them what's their favorite food and they start talking about like their favorite beer, maybe your question doesn't make sense. So you may have to rewrite it. So it's always a good idea to pilot your survey, and you don't have to have a huge sample size when you pilot it. Just ask a few of your friends just to make sure everything is working well, or lab partners, whatever works for you. Okay, before we continue, anybody has any questions so far about what I discussed? Yes, so you should always cite your sources. So for example, if you were to take a question, like let's say you do a public health survey and you take a question from the CDC's, the BRFA study, which is a health study. So when you write the manuscript about it, then you will say, these questions, and you say like questions X, Y, and Z were taken from BRFS, and this is what year was taken from, etc. So it's a really easy citation. Yeah. Anything else so far? Yes.
When you say how you have it,
Correct. There's that. And there's also, I will show you in a few minutes after I'm going to go over the question types, you guys will actually fill up a survey in Qualtrics. And what we will do with these results is I will actually show you what the data looks like after you fill it up. And we will talk about what that looks like and how that might affect your analysis, if this is really the data that you want to know. So let's talk about some question types and what you can do in Qualtrics. So there are 3 or 4 overarching question types here. So I'm going to go through them. The first one is static content, which is essentially your welcome message. You can have a descriptive text where you're saying, hi, everybody, thank you for taking this survey. It's anonymous and blah, blah, blah. You can also include a graphic. So if you have a photo or a video you want them to see first, that is an option. The standard questions, which you will fill up really, really soon. There's multiple choice, which are the most common ones. It's single answer or multiple answer. So, select the one that fits you most, or select as many as possible, whatever is relevant to you. There's also a matrix table that is not just one questions with several options, but you have rows and columns in the same question. You have a text entry, which is essentially your open-ended question. A slider, and we will look at that too. Essentially, a slider is where you can say, from 0 to 100, how much did you like something? And your participant actually use a slider to tell you how much they like something. You can do a rank order where you can give people several options, like what is your favorite day of the week? And they can answer, they can actually say, I like Friday the best, and then Monday, and then Wednesday. And then you have side by side, which is essentially like a matrix or a multiple choice that you just put one right next to each other. Oops. Okay, the fancy stuff, which sadly we will not cover today, but let me talk about this just so that you know it exists. The first one is constant sum. Constant sum is when you are asking your participant to rank something and you have to be at 100%. So for example, if you have 3 foods to take with you to a deserted island, which ones will you rather take the most? You have hamburgers, pizza, and sushi, and they tell you which one they like the most, and it has to be 100%. You have pick, group, and rank, which is essentially like other ranking, but a little more sophisticated. Hotspot is super cool, especially if you work in marketing. This is a really good way. You have essentially a photo, and participants click on the photo to tell you where they like or dislike something. You have graphic slider, which is just like the regular slider, but you can have it with smiley faces or with a grade component. So it actually looks like you're going up and down in grade. A drill down, similar to pick, group, and rank. Net promoter score, which is something that Qualtrics identifies, which is much more about brand recognition and marketing, so I'm not going to go into that. You have a highlight option, which is great if you're trying to analyze a specific text. You provide your participant with a text, and they actually mark with red or green what they like and they dislike. So this is great if you're trying, for example, to promote a brand and you want people to identify it with specific words. So this is how your participants can identify it. The last one is signature, which is exactly what it sounds. It's a question that your participants can either use their finger if they're on a smart device or use their mouse to sign the question itself. The last section is advanced, and there are some things that are actually more for you as the surveyor, as the researcher. So you have timing, which just tells you how much time it takes to answer the survey. If there are meta info questions, just meta like on the background side of the data itself. If you ask your participants to upload a file or to do a screen capture, that's an option that's available. And lastly, there's CAPTCHA verification. Does everybody here knows what CAPTCHA is? Okay, good. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so please open this bit.ly link on a browser. So it's bit.ly/UNLV_iHeartPizza. And we will take 5 minutes to answer that. Okay, so thanks everybody for answering. What I'm going to do now is first I'm going to show you what the questions look like from the back side of it, and then we're going to take a look at the data itself and how it comes out. So this is the back side, all the questions. So this is the text or graphic. This is just your introductory. As you saw, I just told you what this questionnaire was about, and thank you for participating. Is everybody in the back can see it, or do you want me to, do you need? Is it better? Awesome. Cool. So, you can see every time you click on a question, it opens the functional menu of that question to the right. So you can change some of the options from the question itself. You can also change the type of the question from the question itself. So if I would want to change it now to multiple choice, that is an option from the question. So now we have text or graphic. If you'd want to add another questions right before or after, you will just press those little pluses, or if you want to delete this one, you just press this minus to remove the question. Then I created a, yes?
Is there an undo button? Because I accidentally deleted and I couldn't find an undo button.
Control-Z will sometimes return it. And a lot of times there is. You see on the bottom, you have trash unused questions. So the ones that you delete end up there until you have like a lot of them, and then it just tells you that you really need to empty your trash. But that will usually be where they end up once you delete them. So they're never really gone. One of the menus that is available for any question is this one, the action menu, which is just to add page break, display logic, skip logic, which is essentially, depends on what your participant answered on this question, what will be the next one that they will be directed to, or should you skip this question based on something that your participant answered in a previous question. So those are two things. Copy question just duplicates the same question. Move question up or down. Add note, that is usually for another collaborator. And preview question will just open the question, and that's what it will look like. Okay, so then we have the page break, which is, like I said, I just added by clicking add page break. And then this is the first type. So this is the regular multiple choice, and yes?
So every time you add a question and you want it to be on separate pages, you have a page break in between each one?
Correct, yes. And that's one thing to consider too, how many pages you want your participant to go through. Or do you want them to have like a really long survey that they just kind of scroll through? So each one of those has a pros and cons. It's a question for the experts and what you want to get out of your study. So here we have the what is your favorite pizza topping, and we're going to look at your data soon. So in this one, you were able to just pick one one answer, or you were able to do the other and then type one in. You can have, depend on your question, you can have automatic choices. Those are available for every single one. So when you click on automatic choices, you can tell them how many you want, and then you have a long list of very basic agree or disagree, important, unimportant, like to dislike. So you can do that. You can unclick that, and it just goes back. Yes?
You said, okay, for that example where you have other,
Uh-huh.
I put have, but you said that in another portion that there's a question that shifts depending on what your answer is.
So there is a function that's called piped text. So for example, if we would go to this questionnaire and you would select, so that's actually a good one for the next one, where you ask which pizza topping you like, and let's say you selected 3. And then the following question, I will ask you, where do you purchase your pepperoni? Oh, and the anchovy, and then the ham. So whatever, based on what you selected, I will ask you follow-up questions that pipe in these answers.
So it's called
Piped text, and I will show it to you. So let's look at what the question actually looked like. When you just click on the question text itself, you have several options. You have rich content editor, which is the option if you want to add bold, italic, underline, if you want to change the color, if you want to add photos, videos, a link to something, a table. This all happens here. Piped text. So then it pipe a text, and you need to tell it in the question itself where to pipe a text from, so where you bring that other text, that other question from. And then remove formatting just removes all the formatting, so all the bold went away. So now press Control-Z, and now it's back. And again, this is just normal view, which I've never seen anyone does HTML, but if you do HTML, more power to you. Okay, next one, multiple choice, and you can select all that apply. Same as above, kind of, but just with more options. What's your favorite pizza topping? So now you can go really, really wild. This is the part where people will say, I like dolphins, and I like to put pineapples, and also I bake it with pesto sauce. This is usually where people will get super duper detailed, or will be just like NA and continue. So just figure out what data you want to get from your participants if you choose to have an open question. This is the matrix. The matrix, as you can see, you can, it is essentially, again, the same question, how much do you like each one of those? And that is a great place to ask about every single option and how much they like them in a scale, all of them. You can change the matrix type, so you can have it as Likert or other option. Again, think about what you want your data to look like and what is the question you want to answer. What type of answer you want to have. And if you expect your participants to answer on a mobile device, like a tablet or a phone, you want to make sure that it shows as mobile friendly. Forced response is one of those questions where it's like you have to answer this question or it will not happen. In forced response, you have force and request. Force is you really cannot continue. Your participant will not be able to continue forward without answering that question. You want to use that when you ask for your consent. So at the beginning of your survey, you ask your participants, are you willing to participate? This is where you want to ask the forced response, so they won't be able to continue without saying yes or no, and you want that recorded. Request response mean before they continue, if they finish the page, Qualtrics will just tell them, hey, you forgot to answer this. So I'll just return them to that. But if they keep not answering, it will just move forward. And it's just ask once. Custom validation. validation type, those are really great if you're asking something that requires a specific pattern. So if you need something to be answered that is like a date, a phone number, that has a specific like template to it, you want to have custom validation. Okay, this is the slider question that most of you got to answer. And then you can see here how much you actually like the following pizza. I like it 100, or you like it 0. Some of the options that you have here is that you can just have it as bars, where participants will just like drag and snag it all the way how much they want, or you can have stars. I really like it 5 stars. I like it 2 stars. So you have options here. This is the rank one, the one I told you about, where you can rank whatever it is. So give like a hierarchy of your favorite pizza topping. And the next one is, how are your pizza cravings satisfied? This is the side-by-side, where you really want to have compared data. So not only I want, I never ever have pepperoni, or I sometimes have pepperoni, but I just make it at home because I will never like have pepperoni in a restaurant or something like that. So it's a good idea to put those together if you're trying to identify behavior where one is really relevant to the other. So that is it about how the questions are structured. And those are, like I said, those are like the basic questions. Those are just the introductory questions. If you are thinking about something more complex and you have questions about it, consult with the LibGuides, because it has links to the more complex questions, or you can talk to me and we can figure out what's the best way to use that. So now what we're going to do, we're not going to move to the data yet. I just want to show you a few options in terms of the look and feel of the survey itself. You can have, if you want, this is where you choose what your survey will look like. So if you want a previous button, means like, do you want your participants to be able to go back and change their answer and then continue moving forward? If you want to include progress bar, which is always a question, do you want them to know how much more is happening? So if they do choose to drop off because it's too long, they can. You can limit how many questions per page you're asking, stuff like that. Another interesting part is that you can change whatever theme you want. So you can have different themes and it just looks different. So for example, if I choose this one, you can see it has different fonts and different look overall. If you want it to look in different ways and how you want your questions to actually appear. So I'm going to cancel out of that. Survey flow. This is where if you have like groups of questions, those are called blocks. Those are for a little bit longer survey. So if you want your participants, for example, if they answer one, they actually skip a whole block. Or if you have participants, for example, if you identify like, this type of family versus this type of family versus that type of family, each one of them gets a different block of questions. This is where you set that up. It's a little complex, I admit, but it works if you're having like a little bit more complex study. Yes?
So on the formatting, are those pre-formatted, so it just comes with Qualtrics because it was a UNLV1 format?
Yes.
Theme?
Yes.
Like import those from someplace?
They just exist. They just exist, yeah. Yeah. You can also have blank one that doesn't have anything. And I think depends on the option. You can actually even create your own, but I don't really see it here. So if you really don't want this to be shown as UNLV, just pick the blank theme. Okay. Survey options. This is for some of your distribution options and some of like the final touches. So it's pretty self-explanatory if you want to have a back button, if you want your participants to be able to save and continue later, show question numbers versus having a progress bar, stuff like that. In terms of survey protection, it's just things to know that that's an option. So for example, prevent ballot box stuffing. So if you want every participant to just be able to answer once, you want to click that. What else do we have here? Survey termination, when you will answer the final end of workshop survey at the end, if you finish it correctly, if you finish it, if you make it all the way to the end, you will have a little clip of kittens. So you can decide at the end where you want to take your participants. So if you want to take them to your website, or if you want to take them to your classes page, or if you want to give them a GIF of kittens, that's an option. And then also what to do with inactive surveys and with people who start but never complete. So now I'm going to show you what the data looks like on the backside. So I'm going to go back to projects because that shows all of the surveys that I have. And oh, look, 29 responses. Thanks, everybody. Now we can look at what your pizza affection is. Okay, so once you actually answered a survey, if you want to change something, and people have answered, let's see if it will tell me that. Okay, so in the past, and I'm not sure why it's not showing right now, if you were trying to change something after participants have answered, it actually puts a big stop sign, and it's are you sure this is what you want to do? People have already answered. I don't know why it doesn't stop me now, but we'll check that out. But let me show you, for example, how you can distribute once you completed your survey. So you have several options here. You can have an anonymous link, which is essentially what I gave you guys, which is just one link, and to whomever you send it to, they can answer however many times you allow them to do it. You can send emails, and then if you have a list of participants, a list of emails that you already know, you can enter it, you can create a distribution list and send it via emails. So each person will get their own email with their own kind of identifier that you know that they answered it. I think the maximum emails that you can send from the system is either 500 or 1,000. So, and every university and every license is different. So you probably want to call OIT before you do a very large survey that you want to use emails. If you want to generate survey links that are personalized, that's an option. If you want to share it via social media, QR codes. I've never tried the offline app. It has never really worked for me because it kind of depends on license, and I think the additional license at my university was around $1,000 a participant. So unless you have funding to go and collect data with Qualtrics in the field, that you want to use the offline app where you know you won't have access to internet, I suggest you won't try to use it. Okay, so let's look at the data itself. So this is kind of the first page that you see when you just drop by, which you're just looking at the data. As you can see, I didn't collect any information about you, which is, so for example, you can collect the port, the IP address where they came from, or you can ask them to log in or set in a password. So that data will be here or at the end, depends on how you collect that. But it just shows you when it was recorded. What is your favorite pizza topping? Now we can go to the actual questions. If you want to add something in here, let's see, so let's go to page 2, and it gives you more information because we have more responses now. But let's say we want to add, choose columns. So now you want to add another question here so you can compare it. Please rank the following pizza topping. So sausage, and we'll see when was sausage ranked right here, so we can compare it with, for example, question 1. So, and this is just an overview of your data. It doesn't really mean anything when you see it from here. But for example, let's say somebody started this, and now you want to delete them. You can go to either view response, delete response, if you want somebody to retake it or whatever. If you go to delete, you can see that it actually tells you, are you sure you want to do that? Please don't do that. Stop right now. And then it asks you if you are going to delete this, make sure it will reduce the quotas and everything for every question that you have. And then, yes?
Is there a recycle bin for the deleted questions? You want to go back and check?
Ooh. You know, I don't know. I've never tried that because honestly, I've never deleted an answer, so I'm sorry, I don't know. Oh, good question. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to export the data to CSV. And I recommend before you're starting to touch your data, before you're starting to analyze it, once you close your survey to responses, just download it in whatever way you will use it. So I usually download it as a CSV and as an SPSS because CSV, I can use it in whatever program I want, like Excel or R, whereas SPSS, I will use it at SPSS. So let me show you how to download it. So CSV, comma separated value. So I'm going to ask it to download all the fields, so all the questions. And then if I gave somebody, for example, numeric value versus a choice text, this is the place where you can select that here. So download it, and it's coming. And we all take a deep breath. Awesome. So let's save it on my desktop. And it comes down as a zip file, and I'll open it. Okay, so a lot of stuff. So you know when things starts, when things end. I guess when you download the data, it does tell you the IP address, so now I know your stuff. If anybody finished it in the middle or continued it 100%, this is where you'll know it. How much time it took in seconds. And again, if it finished or not. When was it recorded? Oops, sorry, that's a little too fast. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay. So let me show you a couple of things. There's also a location here, so we'll know exactly where it was that people answered. Okay. So this is question one. Question one, if you remember, was just like a regular multiple choice where you only selected one option. So you see you just have one column here for question one, right? So you have one column here for question one, and then for the text. So if anyone selected the other and the text, now you have this column too. If you want to avoid that, just don't give them a text option. Now question two, as you can see here, it actually brought all of the options here. So that means that you have you have a lot of variance in your options, in your data here, so you will need to clean that in order to be able to properly analyze it. So the question where you were able to select all that apply, now you know that people like multiple ones, and it's a good one if you want to know what they like in multiples, but if you just want to know what their favorite one is, just really select one. A lot of times, in my experience, I actually put both questions, so that way you know what people's favorite is, but you also know what they like along with it. So that's a tactic to look at that as well. So we'll look at your text. So I think question 4. Okay, so question 4 was the question with the slides, where you can say like a great deal or not. So you can see how much was that included. So you can see that we have a lot of columns for questions 4. Yes?
So I'm seeing that it's coming out as text. Is there a way to make it so we can export it into Excel or CSV or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Did it come down as a numeric value?
Yes.
I really don't want to have to decode that.
Sure. So when I exported it and download all fields, numeric value or choice text.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what that was.
Yeah, for sure. And when you download it to SPSS, it actually comes with 2 options, and you just need to change the view. Oh, well, never mind. But, yeah. Okay, so here's question 4. So you can see that there's a lot of options and a lot of variables that now you get to explore and figure out which one you like or not. Okay, so this was, I'm sorry, question 5 was the one with the slide. So now you know how much people liked whatever it is, whatever that was the option for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And if there was a text one, how much they liked that. So as you can see, each question brings you a different amount of variables to then analyze or clean and figure out what to do with them. So you want to be aware of that, and that's why I'm showing to you what it looks like on the other side of it, so that you know that you don't always want to answer everything that makes sense to you, or like select all that apply, because all you're going to get is a bunch of other variables that you just need to clean and either break it into columns or combine into columns in order to actually make like a coherent analysis from that. What's the last one that we have? We had 8 questions, I believe. Okay, so how are your pizza cravings satisfied? You can see, so question 7. We have, so now we have not only for each topping, but we also have how you're using it, a column for each and every one. So again, that's another one of your consideration, how you want to break it so that your analysis will be accurate or not. Okay. Any questions about the data so far? I will continue talking about this. Yes, what's your question?
For going back to the numeric data exported,
Sure.
does it tell you what those numeric values are ahead of time, or do you have to tell it what they're going to be? Like, so if you have a Likert scale, is it going to be, strongly disagree, going to be the 5 or the 1?
Let's take a look-see.
Because I'm just thinking I want to save time on recoding since one of these two.
Okay. So let's see. Okay. So what you can see here is that, so essentially, unless you tell it to reverse code, which you can tell it to reverse code in Qualtrics, essentially your top one will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Number 1 choice is always.
Yeah. So, but again, just so that you're aware here, this is what it looks like. Let me make it big. Oops, sorry. Let me make it bigger. So it just comes out your 1 through 5 options.
Right, so the 1 through 5 was the sliders, give you number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for example, these are the sliders, so you're obviously always going to get numbers here. But for example, okay, this one, this question 2, that was the select all that apply, which is why you have 1, 2, 3, yeah. Any other questions about what the data looks like? Okay, cool. So I'm going to continue and go back to Qualtrics. Oops, close. Let's see. So we have text options. Let's refresh that. Yes, I want to include those. All that it does is just show you the text options. It's not very exciting, but now you know what it does. Crosstabs. Crosstabs are essentially you're taking 2 questions and see what is the relationship between them together. So I created one yesterday just to show you what that looks like. So you can see what is this favorite topping versus this favorite question, and you can see that you just create a table with all the different category options, and then it also gives you your chi-square, your degrees of freedom, and your p-value. So at least you have that just from a very, very basic analysis. Weighting is something that you do when you do statistics on your findings. I'm not going to go into that. Enjoy. Yes?
Can you extract this as a SPSS file?
This? Like this specific? Or the data in general?
The data.
Oh, yeah,
Some
absolutely.
you run the crosstabs in SPSS, but
Yeah. You can totally, yeah, so you just go back to your data and you do export and import, and you export data and you press SPSS, and it just brings like that. And it is my favorite way of exporting the data, because in all of your variables, so when you have the variable view versus the data view, it actually gives you all the options, so everything came in. It's a pretty sophisticated connection to SPSS. Reports shows you what every question looks like, and it shows you some very basic visualization. So for example, now we know that the first option, the most liked option, is other, and followed by pepperoni. If you were to look, for example, on your favorite pizza topping, the open field one, you can look at it in terms of counts, but you can also look at it in terms of this word cloud, if that means anything to you. So it's just, you can see what the different options are. For the sliders, it gives you minimum, maximum, mean, standard deviation, variance, and count. So you'll know exactly what's happening in each one of your questions. So essentially, the report is a good way to just take a really brief overview. Yes, sir?
Can you get that graphic into like, because like you want to do like, say you want to do summary statistics for this survey paper or something. Okay.
So you can download it. So you can download the data, or you can download it as a CSV again. And yeah, for sure. Yeah. So all of that is done for you. And then if you want to change that, you can like either add note or add visualization. So for example, when I did that, I added this visualization yesterday. So that's an additional option. Yeah. Any question about what the reports look like?
Another question is,
Yes.
I just thought of it when you're doing reports, but in terms of questions, is there an option there for image? Like depending on the level of who you're giving, like an image? Let's
So
say-
the question will be an image. So for example,
Suppose I'm asking what type of shoes do you like, and I have like.
yes, absolutely, you can do that. Yep, you can do that. You can put photos. I put videos in as well. So like if you want people to, for example, grade the commercials that you created, so you can actually link into videos as well. Yeah. Any other questions about the data itself? Because I'm going to get out of Qualtrics and I'm going to hand it over to you to actually practice.
Just a quick question.
Absolutely.
For this image visual, is there a
Mhm.
way to copy and paste it to a paper or for slides?
So you can.
It looks really attractive. I like
It does look cool, right? So you can download it. You can download it as a PDF. You know, I wonder if you can, if you'll do a save as.
Analysis is a great
Oh,
way
it-
to show to people.
Yeah.
Results, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can download that. Anything else before we move on?
And that's
Yes.
like the size of the words are proportional to how many people selected that option, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it like works on this, very basic algorithm, it's how big it is. Okay, so now it's your turn. So I finished explaining stuff to everyone. So I invite you to do your own activity. If you have your own questionnaire survey that you want to work on and you want me to just come over and give you some tips, we can do that. Or you can partner with somebody that's sitting next to you and you can work on this activity. You're charged with ordering food for an event your department is holding, and you want to make sure you fulfill as many preferences and dietary restrictions as possible. So draft a survey to help you plan what information you need to think about, what information is best gathered through survey, and then you can start drafting questions. And then you can log into Qualtrics, and I'll return to the slide in a minute. You can return to Qualtrics and actually start your survey itself. And I'm going to walk around, and if you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll come and help you. But once you log in, so you need to create an account if you haven't so already, and please use your UNLV email address when you do so. When you get started, you just have a blank survey project and you title your project, and you can just title it like workshop demo. You don't have to be fancy this time. You can click to write the question text and create your questions, and we'll preview surveys. I showed you how to distribute it, and here are some resources which are also included in the LibGuide, and the link to the LibGuide is to the left of the screen. More Qualtrics help available at Qualtrics itself through UNLV OIT and yours truly right here. And when in doubt, Google it because there's so much help online. And before you leave, if you do choose to leave, you're welcome to do so. If you could please fill up this last Qualtrics survey of the day, where I will learn about how this workshop was, and any feedback. Like I said, this is the first time we're running it here, so any feedback would be really, really helpful. And I'm here until 11:30, so you are welcome to stay and work on your survey and ask whatever questions you want.